All right. Time to move from the treadmill. All right. Might have cut that video.
All right. Hey, everyone. We are just waiting on
Yep,
things
I'm
to
on
get
screen.
settled. We got about 12 minutes before we start. I do have Zoom audio
You didn't see that
connected,
PDA, did you?
so you guys can hear us talking, hanging out on the Zoom call. If you got questions or just want to chat, feel free to use the chat. We'll relay any information you need. All right, stream's up.
Make sure.
So how's everything been going, Ron? How's business? How's life?
It's been good. Surprised I'm really more busier than than before. Even though I'm always at home, it sounds like I'm more busier.
Yeah. How you
work
like
longer? It's been good. It's been good. Sometimes I go once a week at the office now.
Okay.
She's just to, I guess, just to demo or do some talk to people. Sometimes it helps out.
Oh yeah.
And then of course my kid is saying, "No, you just want to go eat out or order something." That's what they're gonna say.
It's true. Sure.
We eat home. We cook at home, so most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been good. How about you?
Well, we don't have an office anymore. We got rid of our lease, so we could save some money. And at first I did not like working from home every day at all, but I've actually gotten used to it now. I really like it. So I made myself a little office here within my house, and nice little dedicated space. And
it looks like you have a dark room. You can actually
on
concentrate.
In front of me there's like sound absorption panels. The ridged ones. Behind me, I have a few layers of blankets and sheets, and then a layer of packing blankets. They're like dark blue. And if I open the door, it's actually really quiet in here, which of course keeps the noise of the kids out, which is good. But also I can use this for like recording because of all the sound absorption stuff. So
I was just thinking you can actually start your own podcast.
Yeah, I could.
We told them to change that curtain in the back to green, so we can start green screening them in front of stuff.
I don't want that. Believe it or not. Yeah. I'm afraid of what you would do to me.
Have a different background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a green screen. I was gonna have it on me. There's one that you can just tie into your desk, or to your chair as a background. So instead of like a whole, but it doesn't work very well. So I don't have it. Looks like Zoom already figures out the background, and it's okay.
Yeah, you're in some tropical place right now.
Yep, I'm on vacation from home. This is my way of going on vacation.
I've tried the virtual background stuff sometimes. It's pretty cool stuff.
Sometimes I use the snap filters. Have you use the snap camera? That one's interesting. See if I can access it. Sometimes I'll be able to access through there. Yeah, I'm not gonna change it right now. I have all this set up.
So you're working at a company now called AI Edge?
It's all spacey.
Spacey, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you started or is that a local company?
It's a local company here. I've been doing a lot of their a augmented reality and Internet of Things. So it's more of the stuff that I've been working on is touchless devices, touchless screens, for retail.
Cool.
How to enable that. Good. See if it's gonna work. I have my camera here. Oh, there it is.
Sorry, I didn't realize music was that far down. Alright, if you guys are hanging out on the stream, we are going to start here in the next 6 minutes. We're just kind of hanging out in the Zoom call, catching up.
Filters I sometimes use. Let's see how it goes.
And we'll get, like I said, we'll get started here in the next 5 minutes. If you got questions, just ask them in chat.
My mask.
Nice. Oh, you can even see your mouth a little bit through it. That's interesting.
Yeah. And this one is the crazy part. I look younger. If I want to be younger.
Is there just a younger filter?
Yeah, it's a makes you young.
Oh wow.
And my other twin.
Wow.
I won't show. Yeah, this is me with a beard. Not quite long enough. As Russell has. And this is me, my other twin. Rather be young.
Nice.
Yeah, sometimes use that Snapchat filters.
Well, if you keep that on, we can tell everybody we have a 12-year-old presenting tonight.
There you go.
Kid presenter, little Ronnie.
Yeah, I did like log in one day through my how we have our daily stand up, and they thought it was some kid that they just went to their screens to their meeting.
Nice. Now, just out of curiosity, how close is that to how you actually looked as a kid?
Nah, it's not as close.
Not close. No.
Maybe. Nah.
Well, is everybody ready for the cooler weather? I'm looking forward to more walks outside.
Yeah.
Of course, it's only gonna last for 2 weeks, right? And then we have the winter time. But it's better. I like it this year. We'll have more rain.
Yeah, I won't have to water my garden any for days. Maybe, I don't know how long I can go. Maybe a while. Hey, Chris.
Hello. Sorry, I was just getting situated.
Oh, cool.
I'm in my quarters here on the Cerritos.
Nice.
I was saying, I mean, like, which starship is that? Yeah.
It's the Cerritos from Lower Decks. It's a new animated series from the new Trek stuff.
Okay, so I watched one episode of that. I thought it was pretty good, and my wife was like, "Yeah, I can't get past the chick on there," and I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll watch it after you go to bed." So, but
Yeah.
I haven't gone back to watch it because I'm still at the end of watching Stargate series. So,
Yeah. I actually was probably surprised. I didn't think I would like it because it's animated. I thought, it wouldn't seem like real Star Trek, but it's actually pretty funny, and they have a lot of callbacks to the shows that we've all seen and stuff. If you've been a long time Trek watcher, and so it's pretty fun. I mean, you could also say it's kind of like a gimmick to do all the callbacks, but it's enjoyable, and it feels like real Trek, so I like it. I actually like it better than I like Picard.
I'm
The
lukewarm
show
on
Picard.
Picard.
What'd you
Yeah,
say?
I'm lukewarm on Picard also.
It was okay, but there was just, I mean, they had like a wand that magically fixes things, literally. And I don't know, there was just a lot of Deus Ex Machina there in that show, and it just felt strange to me. I'm hoping season 2 is better.
Yeah.
But
What
I've like good for you.
what Stargate are you on?
I am halfway through season 1 of Stargate Universe, and I'm on like season 4 of Stargate Atlantis, give or take. And so it's I'm real close to watching Arc of Truth and Continuum. I did watch Stargate Origins, and I thought that it was okay. It was entertaining at least.
What is that? I thought Stargate was like one show. I've never actually seen it, but I thought it was like a show.
Well, so they did a movie in 1994. Kurt Russell and James Spader. Uh, I thought it was a good movie.
Yes.
Then they reboot it in like with Stargate SG-1 like 96 or no 97 or something like that. What were you going to say, Eric?
No, it was a good movie. Is all of a sudden.
Yeah.
The TV show was good too.
SG-1 is the one I was thinking of. I remember seeing that on Sci-Fi Channel back in the day, but I never saw it. Unfortunately, instead, I saw some episodes of Sliders, which was terrible.
I don't even remember what I was watching. Well, I know I wasn't watching anything in 96 and 97 because I was in college, but like in 98 on forward, I don't really remember any of that.
My wife brought the dog to me to handle. Here she is.
Oh, there you go. Puppy tax.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow, it's cutting her out. It doesn't like her in the AI for the background. There go your ears.
Well, I guess we can get started whenever we want to. Are you ready, Ron?
I am ready.
All right. Do you realize you still have the kid Ron going right now?
Yeah.
I'm going to stop that share and we'll let Ron if Ron, you'd like to go ahead and do your screen sharing and get going.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody. I want to introduce Ron Dagdag. Ron is a senior software developer at Spacey. Ron has spoken for us many times, and he always brings fun stuff. And I'm looking forward to this. So thanks, everybody, for coming. Ron, thank you once again for doing this. And if you guys have questions, you can hit us up on Slack, and then we can bring it up later. If it's an appropriate time, you can, of course, speak here on Zoom. So thanks, Ron, and take it away.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to talk this .NET user group. Today we're going to be talking about men from Mars, women from Venus, both can code .NET in Jupyter. Like my play in words that they're different title. By the way, my name is Ron Dagdag, and let me tell you a backstory how I came up with that title. My wife and I, my name is Ron and my wife's name is Leo, that we're both .NET developers. And I was kind of thinking about, I've been a .NET developer since 2005, and my wife actually has been doing .NET Framework 1.0. Really that when we were just talking about all the different things we've experienced with .NET and the different changes all throughout the years. I remember attending, was it the Fort Worth .NET user group back in, I think, 2006, 2007 timeframe. And that's when I started, learning more and be active in the .NET community. Lately, I've been doing a lot of .NET for AR and IoT applications, and my wife has been doing a lot of maintaining large enterprise application. I do a lot of .NET Core. My wife does a lot of .NET Framework. I work for a startup. That means we're making brand new software. I need to change my camera, right? I really feel weird seeing myself being this young. I feel young again, even though I've been a .NET developer since 2005. Maybe people won't believe me, like, who's this kid trying to learn? Let me go back to what I really look like, just in case you're wondering. No,
It is
now I
a little disconcerting. Just
yes, okay. Yeah, so you see the stark difference. I do a lot of brand new software. My wife does create software or software that makes lots of dollars and lots of money maintaining existing out there. And so even though we're like, live in the same .NET solar system, the same household, in two different worlds of the two different places where .NET evolves. And then we started hearing about another world out there, and that the world of the Jupyter and data science and Pythonistas. I heard that, Pythonistas live in Jupyter notebook these days. So I'm sure that it's true because they have a mug and you can buy those mug online. And so today we're going to be talking about what is Jupyter, and then we'll talk more about .NET Interactive, running .NET within Jupyter notebooks, within Raspberry Pi to do a demo. And if hopefully we land in Jupyter somewhere and meet the Pythonistas. Okay, Jupyter is an open source web application. It's been around since 2015. It's actually made to create, and share documents, anything related to visualization, live coding, a lot of the interactive data science and computing. It actually got started. The word Jupyter is a combination of Julia, Python, and R. That's how they came up with that name. And it used to be called IPython notebooks back in 2015 and got evolved since then. Has anyone used Jupyter notebooks before, or have experimented or played with it? And what is your experience, or what do you?
I messed around with it a little bit with Python. I thought it was really cool. So yeah,
Cool.
I'm looking forward to seeing this because I've never heard of anybody doing it in .NET.
Okay. So .NET Interactive, that is a new .NET Interactive is a new open source platform or new open. It's on GitHub. It's .NET into interactive experience like Jupyter Notebook, Interact. You can actually use it, inside Visual Studio Code. At the end of the day, it's a way to share and explore data and learn across application. That's pretty much the main goal. And they have an icon and it looks cute, and that's why I put it in there, and has planets in it. So I thought it was very interesting. It's still .NET because of that helmet, right? That icon. So .NET and Jupyter notebooks allow us to, in Jupyter, they have their term called kernels, where you can run Python, R, C#, .NET, C#, F#, and also you can use PowerShell inside. So they have different kernels to be able to access. There's also, they call it magic commands that kind of list all the different capabilities of that notebook. And I'll do a demo later on. There's also the idea of a pocket view, because since it's running inside in the browser, you can display and create HTML on top of that view, on top of that notebook. And if you want to print charts, anything data visualization, this would be a great tool. I think the best example of how we can start using Jupyter notebooks is through Azure Data Studio. Has anyone used Azure Data Studio, or have used it, or have seen it? It's open source. It's out there on GitHub. This is kind of like the SQL management studio, right? So you can create your own query, connect to our database, and you can download this the Data Studio. But one feature that it has is this new notebook. So you can have your SQL query in the notebook also. The idea there is be able to get your code, and then it would give you examples, give you the result in one page. So if let's say we create a C# notebook right here. So I have .NET Interactive running on my machine. Once I got it running, there's instructions out there, and I have a script to be able to install it locally in your machine. But it allows you to have these kernels. If you create a Python notebook, so that IPYNB, that is the extension. So when you create a new notebook, and it would give you this capabilities, you can do SQL, C#, Python, But in this case, let's say I just want to do a C#, and this is what the notebook would look like. Say I write console.writeline, and I would run it, and it would give me the result below it, and then I can create another one, right? New code or text cell. And then I can say console write line again. And then the results of it, once I run, and then I would save the whole project. When I reopen it, it will have the code and the result. So in one page. So the person that is trying to run it, let's say you give it to your coworker, and they would have an idea what's going to happen, right? Because it has the command and the result. And that would be very good, like especially when you're doing, like connection to Azure. So you can have the interaction with PowerShell. So you can specify PowerShell and your PowerShell commands over here, and be able to interact with Azure this way. So it's repeatable. It's in the same notebook, and whoever you're sending that information, or some of your coworkers, it also serves as a documentation in a way, because it gives you like, okay, here's the command, and this is what I expect how it would run, and the other person would have an idea of what that command looks like and how to work with it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. You know, just a curiosity. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Have you seen the Swift Playgrounds?
Swift Playgrounds?
Yeah.
No, I have not. Is it about the same?
It's a very similar idea, and I was just wondering which came first, Swift Playgrounds or Jupyter Notebooks. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, I haven't really tried that, but that's the idea there. So also Visual Studio Code, you can actually edit Jupyter notebooks there too. So if you don't, there's a extension, right? A .NET Interactive Notebooks extension that allows you to open up notebooks, the IPYNB extension. You can convert it to Jupyter Notebook, and the .NET Interactive team has specifically a different type of notebook that specifically runs on Visual Studio Code, and the extension is DIB. I haven't really experimented more on the DIB extension, but it's specifically for Visual Studio Code, and I've always been just using the Python notebook running in Visual Studio Code. So at the end of the day, this is how the magic happens, how the .NET Interactive happens, right? So these are the applications where you can run .NET Interactive. You can do VS Code. You'll see it also in, I guess eventually in Visual Studio, Spark.NET, in Synapse, Azure Notebooks, Azure Data Studio, just like how I showed you. Jupyter and Jupyter Lab. The difference between Jupyter and Jupyter Lab, the lab has where you can open files, and it's a multi-window. Jupyter is only one notebook that you can open. There's also Interact, which is about the same as Jupyter. I haven't really messed with that part. You can also integrate .NET Interactive with CodeBots and using Teams. So like you can chat. Yeah, you can do using that chatting. Microsoft Citizen Apps and Try.net. Try.net is a lot of the documentation, Microsoft documents, Microsoft Docs. There's the button that says try this code, and it allows you to, without even running, without even installing .NET, it runs in the browser, and you can try some of the tutorials they have there. So there's a lot of that right now. But so this is that term about kernel. So you'll have this application running in the background, and as you send commands and receive commands, it would keep one of the kernels running for your code, and you can interact that way. So any changes in line of code, it would send back the command, get the results back and forth, and that's how you can interact more. Notice that there's, when I run console.writeLine on Azure, on these Python notebook, there's no main, right? There's no, it's a different paradigm in how you would do programming. So eventually you can also have your own if you want to extend this library for other languages. There's a way to do that, and I see that you have SQL and some custom DSL that they're possibility of adding eventually. It's kind of like the REPL commands, right? In .NET CLI, or even in JavaScript and Python, the REPL commands. Okay, now we'll move on to Raspberry Pi. Well, that's one of the reasons I got excited talking about this, is because .NET is not just laptop, right? It's not just desktop. It also, .NET also runs in ARM devices, in IoT devices, right? And be able to communicate with their IoT devices. So it also this tells us it also runs in Linux. So on this Raspberry Pi, I have Linux running on it, and not the Windows IoT Core. So this one is running on I currently have here a Raspberry Pi 4 that I have it installed. And I have these Raspberry Pi Sense Hat. It's just a collection of sensors that sits on top of Raspberry Pi in order to get some sensor data and display some sensor information. So to install it on the Raspberry Pi, this is the the script. There's a script that you can run that does install .NET Core on a Raspberry Pi. It also installs Jupyter notebooks and also the .NET Interactive. I'll show you the script later on how it runs. And there's some instructions that you have to go in order to enable the Sense Hat running on the Raspberry Pi. And there's a good documentation that walks you through enabling that. And I provided the link on here too, in case you want to experiment. So if you're interested in getting my presentation material or reading more about these, the source code that I'm going to show tonight, here's the link to the presentation. And I believe I will go to my demo.
Hey, do you think you could put that link in the chat?
Yes, I can.
Channel and share it that way.
If I know where that chat window is. Chat, there you go. Okay, so I have that link on the chat. So right now, I had just to show you where that Raspberry Pi is, sitting right over here. Change my, okay. So that's the Raspberry Pi I have, and with the Sense Hat on top of it installed. And this is, once you install it and run, you got it running on that machine. That's the IP address of my on my Raspberry Pi, and it told me to go to port 888. There's a link that tells you how to get to get it connected there. So I have that connected. But I'm more interested in the coding side once you get it set up. So this is Jupyter Lab. I like Jupyter Lab because you can change windows, right? It looks like an application rather than the Jupyter Notebook. Each one of these is a Jupyter Notebook, right? So I can switch back and forth. I also can upload files if I want to. I'll be able to to see all the kernel sessions that are currently running. The cool thing about this too is I can file new terminal. I don't have to SSH once I get it installed, so I'm like logged into that machine in the browser. I thought that's pretty interesting. So I'm on my Raspberry Pi, instead of SSH to that box, I just use Jupyter in order to connect, or if I need to run. So like in this case, that setup that runs, this is the shell script that runs, which talks about that, how you would install .NET, right? The shell script that how you would install .NET in Raspberry Pi. I bet it would be the same in Windows. If you're using the WSL, you can do it that way too. There's also that part where the .NET Interactive. This is how you would install .NET Interactive. That it downloads it. It's at the end of the day, it's just another NuGet package. But since I want the latest and greatest version, I specify the source where the NuGet packages are. This is how you would install PowerShell. You can run PowerShell inside Linux now, and also inside the Raspberry Pi. I thought that's wild. I've never seen that coming, but yeah, it runs. And also, this one installs the Jupyter notebooks, right? It's just, you gotta have Python installed in this box, and it's just a pip install Jupyter and Jupyter Lab. Cool. Of course, in order to run it, I have this script. Just say Jupyter Lab with the browser, and it spins up this instance where I can connect from outside my Raspberry Pi to this Jupyter Lab. Okay, so we'll start with this. So first things first, how you would run in a Jupyter Lab. There's 3 options, right? In each one of these cells. So let's say if I want to create a new cell or edit this document, right? I can just double click on that, and this one is using Markdown, right? The same Markdown. So if I want, of course it's, yeah. So if I want hello user group NDD nug, right? Oh, right. So it allows you to do that and create documentations, formulas. There's ways you can do that in Markdown. And if you want code, you can specify, hey, I want to insert a new line. You click the plus, and it would insert a new line. If you want it as Markdown, code, or raw, typically select either code or Markdown. So if I want code, it allows me to create. In this case, I created a C# kernel, right? So if I want to create a different one, I can just create a new notebook, and it would ask, first things it asks, do you want a Python? Do you want C#? Do you want PowerShell? So you have a way to create those. So let me close that one. Any questions so far? You good?
I have a question. Does
Sure.
Does Lab install on Windows and/or Windows Subsystem for Linux?
Yes, it does. It does install that. I mean, it installs in Linux. There's some tutorial. The easiest way you can install it locally if you have a Windows machine is using Anaconda. And there's some instructions out there how you would install Anaconda and Jupyter Notebooks. It just makes it easier. Because if once you install Anaconda, it already has Jupyter Notebooks installed for you, and you just go to that app and enable it.
Anaconda, that's a Python distribution, right?
Yeah. So once you install that, and then you install .NET Interactive, now it allows you to have that different kernel. It adds a different kernel. Let me see if I can. So let's see, Jupyter kernel spec. Y'all can see that, right? So initially, when you install Jupyter, it will have just Python installed. But once you add and install the .NET Interactive, where you install .NET Interactive, I think .NET install. I forgot where my setup script is. It tells you right here. This one right here. That's the one that installs it, and this is the one that installs .NET Interactive Jupyter install. So you're saying to .NET install it to your Jupyter instance. Install .NET Interactive to your Jupyter instance. So once you do that, when you do kernel spec, it will give you that. It allows you that access. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, good. So like in this case, I was talking about LS Magic. If I just want to run a cell, I do Shift Enter, and I can just run it. And if you just want to experiment with Jupyter Notebook without installing anything in your machine, I would recommend go to .NET Interactive, right? It's all on GitHub. And if you just want to experiment tonight and just try it out, what else can you do in this .NET Interactive? There is a link here where it says try sample .NET Notebook using Binder. So what this one does is it creates, and then you click on this button, it creates a new instance of .NET. It has this Docker file that installs all these. It creates a temporary instance of .NET, Python, Jupyter. It installs Jupyter Lab and everything in between in order to run it. And then once it's ready, it points you to that link, and then you can start experimenting. Actually, it's ready now. So now I have pretty much, if I want to experiment and try this out, what are the different commands I can try with this Jupyter notebook? I can just do that. I don't have it installed anything in my machine, and it just works. You don't need Raspberry Pi to run these. So that's what's great about it. Okay, going back to my presentation, because I keep on going. So these are the different kernels and commands that you can run on this. There's an F# kernel, C# kernel. There's a PowerShell kernel. There's also JavaScript kernel, HTML kernel, and all these. So just an example where I can switch from a C# kernel that's currently running right now to F#. I can just call, pound bang F#, and I can just write F# code, assign a value, and run it that way. So what's happening in the background, that's why it's taking a little bit longer. It's actually creates an instance of that F# kernel, and passes this code, runs it, and since I assigned X to that, and if I want to bring it to my C# kernel, I can just say share from F# the variable, and now I can pick it, meaning I can start using it in my program. So let's say if I want to add a new one and I just want to access Y, right? Y is in the F# program. I should not be able to access that, but I can say X+1, and that give me that value because I only imported that variable. And that's how you would share from one notebook to the other if you want to do that. If I want to list all my PowerShell commands, or I just want to show you guys that you can also run PowerShell commands. And if you just want to run each one, to try out, you can do that too. So there's that possibility or capability to run PowerShell commands inside a Linux box on a Raspberry Pi. NuGet packages, you can also import NuGet packages, and this is how you would do that. You just do $R or $R, or hashtag R, and just specify the NuGet package. And what it will do is would download all those NuGet packages from NuGet and install it in your in that kernel. Like in this case, since it's already cached, it already has those things. To display HTML, like in this case, I want to, the HTML code, I have an anchor tag with that value. And when I click on it, it would open up a new page. And this is, this is the title of that. And I would put it in a spam tag. And so in this case, I want to display Pocket View. And there's my link. That's my HTML. And if I click on it, you can see my presentation. Yeah, pretty much the materials that I have for this presentation. So that in this case, I want to create an HTML. You can write HTML that way and display it, assign it to a variable. I'm getting this error for some reason. Do just something new. It's not really an error. It's a what you call these. It's just a warning. I think there's a way you can specify. Is it pragma? I don't remember the right word now. Let me try to pick it up here real quick. Sorry. I was just looking at it a while ago. And I don't want to see that error because it's kind of confusing. Let me go back there, paste it. This is, I guess there's something new that just came out, or my version of Visual Studio, or my version, not Visual Studio, my version of .NET is different from what it's expecting. So it tells me that I need to supply runtime. So if I want to hide that one, I can just disable that warning. So in this, what I wanted to do is to read the temperature data from the sense hat, right? And after I read the, so in order to do that, I added this IoT.device.sense hat, which allows us to be able to access, like in this case, IoT devices. So this system.device.gpio allows .NET developers to be able to access IoT bindings, or the GPIO, general purpose input-output of this Raspberry Pi. And the bindings, the device bindings, it has a lot of pre-existing configurations out there, or different types of sensors that the IoT team at Microsoft have already built. It's also these are all in GitHub, and it's open source out there. So if you have an existing sensor that you can incorporate, and if you want to use it in .NET, you can create its own library. So like in this case, I want to use the sense hat inside my program, and I want to be able to read the temperature. And so I create using sense hat, and this is how I would read the temperature, right? Temperature 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And so if I want to call this read temperature, right? Read temperature, and I want to call it, 15 times. I can just experiment, and you see how I'm updating this temp output, which is the variable that is on here. I'm updating, creating HTML, and it started to modify that one. And if I just want to say, okay, I want to just do it 5 times, I can just go back. I don't have to rerun my whole program again. I just want that part of my program that I want to change, and it allows me to change that, right? That's the whole idea behind the .NET Interactive. I can go back and forth, do experiment, try different things, and get the results. So the next one, I want to plot or create a graph of my sensor data. So remember, on this code, I created a list of tuples. Tuple is a combination between index and the value. So in this case, I just want to get the values. I don't really care about index. So if I want to do that, I can just select it. What I'm showing here, it automatically creates index. Whenever it displays something, it shows you this index. That's not the index that is on my temperature list, but actually it's the index that was generated by displaying it inside .NET Interactive. So initially I got sensor data 15 times, and then I added another 5 items. So that's why I have 20 items in my list. And if I just want to create and visualize that sensor data, I can use this graph.scatter that is actually part, I want to go back here, that is part of this using Xplotly or XPlot. And I can just pass in, okay, just my temperature and get the index and then the values. I separate X and Y so that it will graph properly. And I specify, you specify chart, plot with this data set. And with, create that chart. And if I want to display it, I just say display chart. Of course, I got to run that part of the code before I run this other one, or else it'll give me an error. And there you go. I have a chart of my sensor data, just like that. I don't have to, just use this library. It's on the same place. It allows us to interactively learn what the code is doing and also display, manipulate and work with the data. And it's, this is a good plotting tool because you can zoom in, zoom out. It already has that functionality for you. It's really made for data visualization. If you want to capture that as an image, it kind of gives you all that plotting mechanism. So that's why a lot of data scientists use Jupyter notebooks or something alike, because they can walk through the code, experiment, interact with it if they want to change. Okay. So in this one right here, any questions so far before anything else? Isn't that cool? You can create a graph, right? I mean,
That is cool.
yeah. I don't have to create, it's a different way, right? If you think about, where we came from, like Windows Forms and WPF, Silverlight, and all these different visualization. And now it's all running in my browser. That's totally different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, this one, I'm using asynchronous streams. Anyone heard of asynchronous streams? Asynchronous streams allows you to return is async enumerable. In this case, I want to loop 10 times. And as I read the temperature data, I would delay after 1 second. I would read the temperature data, and then I would send it back. But I'm not done. I mean, because that's why you have that yield return, right? As you receive the data, you send it back to whoever called it, and then wait another second and you send the next data. And so it becomes a stream of data. So I have that asynchronous stream, and on this next statement, I'm doing a NuGet package, and I want to import it, this Microsoft data analysis. This one allows me to be able to create data frames. Data frames is very useful if you're working with large data sets. You're reading something from your database and you want to, you don't want the whole database in a string, in a list or something, right? The data frame allows you to be able to create and process your data. And anyway, I'll show you what I mean by that. So in this case, I want to create this primitive data column. So I want to create multiple columns, data frame columns. In this case, I want to get the date. I want the date times column and then the Fahrenheit column. So I have date times and Fahrenheit. And what I'm doing here, if I may go back, is as I read the data, right, read the temperature, I can do an await for each. Await for each allows us to be able to await every time I receive an asynchronous stream. As I receive it, I would update my display. I would add to this date times column, and I would add to this Fahrenheit column. So let me see how that one goes. So now that it's running, you notice that every second it's changing, and it's actually adding, after it yields and gets these Fahrenheit data. After it receives the data, it would go here and would append, and then it would wait again after 1 second once it's ready to process another one, and it would just process the next one as it goes. It's a different way, right? Asynchronous stream. But if you have large data as you would receive it, you can do a wait for each. So in order to create a new data frame, so like in this case, we want to do var df is equals to new data frame. I think it's that way. And I want to include this date times and Fahrenheit column. If I want to do that, so give me a new instance of that data frame. And if I just want to display it, this is what it looks like. It's like blah. Right? It's like, how am I going to map each one? But what it happens is there's my data frames and the data inside that, the date time, and then this one right here. This is the data. I think it's all like a combination or like a pair at this point. Your date time and then the sensor data. In order to display it properly, there is this formatter that you can register for all the data frames, and as you receive it, because you don't want to list all your in this case, I just want the first 5 items on that list and display it properly. And so this one is kind of creating the HTML header and what it would look like. So let me try to run that. I copied this from somewhere. I didn't write that one as part of the example, but it would look something like this, right? See how it made it cleaner to read because of that. So every time I would call a data frame, I would display a data frame, it would go through this program and just pick the last or the first 5 items and display them in a table at the end of the day. Any questions so far? Cool. So just like any list, yeah, you can also put them in the chat. If you're, I can read. I will be able to read them later if you have some questions. So if I just want to take the first 2 items, the first 2 rows, I can do that. See how it's a pair of, that it all automatically pairs them based from the index, right? So the first entry and then the value of the date, time, and the Fahrenheit. So if I want to get to count the number of rows, I guess it will be df.rows that count, right? See if is it this way? There you go. So there's 15 items on my record. 15 rows. So in this case, I want to add another column to my, I created the Celsius column, and it's of type double. And I want 15 items, right? In this case. So once I do that, and this one I cloned the data frame to create a new data frame, just because. And I want to insert on that new data frame another column with this one right here. And let's see what it's going to look like. See how that right there, I was able to add another column without going through and looping to all my items. And if I want to get some information about my data frame, you can do this and say, okay, what's the length of, like in this case, there's 0, right? There's no items, they're all nulls. So there's no items on the Celsius column, but I have date, times, and then the Fahrenheit. And if I want to assign and fill in and set it to 0, initialize this Celsius column to 0, I can just say, Celsius.fill in and display it. And this one did it for all 15 items, right? It's not just, one item, not just the first 5 that you see here. This is just visualization that to confirm, and display what we've done so far. They already did it on all the 15 items. This one right here, if I just want to get the first row, I can do that too. So now I have row 0. One thing that I really didn't like yet, hopefully it will get better. Maybe it will get better on the, if it's on Azure Data Studio or Visual Studio Code, is that there's no IntelliSense. And so I have to sometimes figure out, what was that thing, command? We all got used to IntelliSense, and that's the only thing that kind of like slows me down every time I would, try to experiment with this. But yeah, so like in this case, I got the row 0. Now on this next magic trick, we want to do, we want to assign the Celsius column. Right now it's all 0, and I want to assign it to where it's Fahrenheit, right? Convert this Fahrenheit value and plug in the values on my Celsius column. So Fahrenheit minus 32, I guess that's the formula right there, times 5/9 is our formula for Celsius. And then just right there, it plug in that formula. It just reminds me of Excel. Just doing this, right? Excel would be like, you had that formula and it goes through each one of these and then did convert. Isn't that cool? I don't have to do a for loop. It becomes declarative at this point. It's easier to read. This one allows me to calculate, if I want to calculate the mean or average of that column, I can. And there's a lot of other mathematical formulas that you can do. So a lot of it is really data exploration. If you have to do calculations and all that. I think there's a limitation of size, and I think you can. I don't know the limitations of data frame, what the size is, on top of my head, but we can research more about that. And on this next one, if I want to chart my data frames, I can just create a chart of that new Celsius column that we just converted, and you can see where it's at, and we can visualize what that column is. So imagine if this is, thousands of rows, it automatically builds out for you, and just declare that. Cool. All right. This one right here, I want to, get the temperature data, but I only want to limit this to the last 10 items. Anything beyond that 10 items, I just kick it out. I get the sensor data. If the list has more than 10 items, I don't care. I just want to see get the latest, the last 10 items. And there's this code that allows me to write JavaScript this time. I'm writing JavaScript inside my C#, my Jupyter notebook. And this JavaScript allows me to, to create a plot. The reason why I wanted to show you this, because I think it's very interesting, is how you can add, like in this case, the D3.js inside my JavaScript, kind of like a require and include. In this case, this is a require config. So it would download the D3.js on this, and then once I have D3.js, I can write some JavaScript here. This one, I'm trying to create a graph. We don't have to delve more, but I wanted to show you, to talk to you about the magic of what's happening here, because there's this part where I can get import variables from my C# code to this JavaScript using this variable name. So if I want to get the data from my C# code, incorporate it to my JavaScript, and then do some data manipulation or display it properly, like in this case, I'm working with D3.js to make a graph. At the end of the day, that's what it's trying to do, to visualize. And then every second, go to the next one, get the variable name, display it, and then another second, call again. See that set interval. So after 1 second, it updates my display. Okay, so see if I can run that part. But before I run, I want to make sure I go back here. Sorry about this, guys. I should have looked at. I think I'm looking at 107. I want to make sure the graph looks okay. So, I want to do 108 here. So the min and max of my y-axis when I display it. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So if I want to get my, what you call these? So this one right here, I have the HTML, I have this SVG file, or not SVG file, but this SVG tag. That means I'm going to display something on this cell, and it's called data plot, right? So if I want to be able to do this, let's see if I can make sure I write it properly. I want to call this JavaScript, right now I want to call this JavaScript program, this notebook scope dot, so going back here, notebook scope dot plot. I want to call that this method right here, right? So notebook scope dot plot, and I want to reference this HTML, this SVG. So I want to go get my that SVG tag data plot, right? And I want to pass in a variable, because when I call these, there's two parameters: the SVG selector, meaning where do I display it, and this variable name that is being used to read the variable name in C#. So this variable name is this temp data right here. I want this JavaScript to read this temp data, C# temp data, and be able to display it. And that's how I link JavaScript with C# in this code. Let me go back there. And the way I would do it is using temp data. See how it would display. So now what it's doing is I created the chart, right? This is how, a chart is being created using that Plotly anyway. But if in this case, I want to call read temp data, right? Once I started calling that function, technically, if everything goes right, read temp data. Does not exist. Read temp data. Did I call it read temp data? Oh, of course. Sorry about that. I need to see how it you notice that it has not executed. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to execute that part. See how it's that 38, the number tells me like this one got executed first before this, but that's fine, right? Now I can go back to this program and call it because I know it. So you see how it's twisted around. I can go back and forth if I want to rerun it. But now that it's running, I don't know what's happened to my display for some reason. Oh, because it's 108, it's beyond my number. See the temperature data? My chart only goes to 107, so most likely it's hidden somewhere. So let me see if I can change that one real quick. So you see the exploration part of it, where I can change the code, run it again, display it, and see that's my chart. That's my initial chart. I don't have to go back, the usual way of how we run .NET, right? there's a stop button, play, start over from scratch, from the beginning. This one kind of moves away from that, and let's do interactive coding. See how my chart is moving? Because I only picked the last 10 items and I plot it on here. And after it's done, it tells me, because there's a number there. Of course, I don't know if you've noticed when it's running, there's a star or the asterisk. But once it's done, it assigns a number. That means it already, triggered 50 times and read my chart data. And if I want to display my temp data, there's only 11 items on it because it throws away all the rest of them, even though we requested 50 times. Cool? So on this next one, what I want to do is that I want to combine that data. Once I receive temperature data, and if the temperature is a certain number of degrees, right, it should alert. In this case, I want to change the LED matrix on the sense hat. I wanted to make it all red. All the LED would turn red. Like in this case, if it's more than 108 something, and I think it should trigger it. So technically, if I go back here to our, see if I can visualize it for you. Okay. Okay, I was able to hide them. Come on. There you go. So in this case, I want to read temp condition, and I want to do it maybe 20 times. And if it's more than 109, let's try it with 109. I don't know if it's going to go way past that. If it's more than that, this should turn red. Of course, I almost forgot to run it again. I bet I would have an error, right? Yeah, that's just the await error. I'm going to start running it. So 107, 107, 107.5. Hopefully it goes to 109, but no, I don't think we're going to go to 109. The temperature is too high. I'm going to do 107.5. Let's try it again. There, of course, it's first shot, it turned red. Because the latest temperature is 107.74 or something like that, but it is red. And if I want to clear it, I can clear out that way. I turn it off because it's too bright and it really hurts my eye. When I was experimenting on this, it was like, dang. So whenever you're playing with these LED, especially if you have a bunch of them, don't look, just cover the whole thing. Because it's really like a flashlight in your face. Isn't that cool? All right. So there is another one that I want to show you guys. Any questions so far? Is this helpful? Is it something that, I mean, even if you're doing all these in C#, regular, console app, it's fine. I'm just showing you different ways of how you can be in the Pythonistas and Jupyter world out there. It's a different world out there from what we're used to as .NET developers. So in this case, it's kind of like the same one. The sample right here. This one right here, I got the NuGet packages, right? And work with the sense hat. I want to disable it. And this one, I want to read the temperature, kind of like the same way, using async enumerable. And as I read it, because I already pre-run this, and as I read the data, right? As I read it, I would like to add it to this list, but I want to round up the time. So this is what the data looks like, right? I got the data, I round up the minutes and then the temperature, round up the minute that I got the temperature. And so I have a list, okay? What I wanted to do is to see this anomaly detector, cognitive services anomaly detector. So I did import that package. And what this package would do is read my sensor data. And based from the last reading, I want to know if it's an anomaly or not. Meaning it's, the sensor is too high or too low. It's out of the normal, right? So in this case, I have two functions. Right here is where I'm using, in order to do that, I'm using this anomaly detector, which is a cognitive services that you pass in it's just at the end of the day, it's just an API call to, if you're not familiar with data science, if you just want, kind of like an algorithm, an API that you can just pass in the data and would tell you, it would automatically generate the capabilities or the algorithms for machine learning. So in this case, my data looks like every minute, right? I would pass it to this request object or request class, which is part of these request detector models. And what this one does is, once I have this anomaly detector client, I call these last detector async and pass in the request. So in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm passing in the whole data set, right? This stream of data. I'm passing that in to the API, and what it will do is it would tell me if it's anomalous or not. If the last number that's on my time series data is anomalous or not. Of course, you need an API key in order to call the API, the anomaly detector API. And there's instructions right here in this link to be able to call the anomaly detector. But you need an endpoint and subscription key in this case. So endpoint would be the URL, which URL you can connect to your API, and then the subscription key that gets passed in every time you call the API. In this case, this is how you create this anomaly detector client. You pass in the endpoint and the key, and now you have these client that you can call. So in this case, what I did here is I read the temperature data, and the last one on that temperatures list, I faked it to create an anomaly. So the last number would be around 200, so that when I pass it to this API, hey, there's, the last one is invalid. So once we get the temperature, we check if it's, you call these two functions, you get the series of data and pass in the client and then the request, check if it's anomalous. And if it's an anomaly, you change the color to red. So in this case, since I have it running, technically, of course, it did turn red. I forgot to show you guys. There's that red item again. But you see where I'm saying the last item is anomalous because, it's 108, 105, there's that range. And then once I call the API, the last item was invalid. And so it triggered that, hey, that whatever sensor reading, the last sensor reading. Yeah, that's bad data. It's not usual based from this history.
Hey, Ron, this is Itral. Does that only work? You know, the anomaly detector only work on like numeric values, or could you pass in like a whole structure and have it analyze like a class or a data structure and pick out an anomaly there too? You know how?
Currently, I believe it's only values. It's really for time series data
Uh-huh.
and only values. So if you can do some mapping, to convert it to something that is a numeric value,
Sure.
it will be able to detect if there's anomaly or not. But it's specifically made for, like, for example, a lot of the examples that it's out there is you're monitoring a server. There's it has ups and downs, like it has some series, time series data, right? And they would detect patterns based from that.
Yeah.
Let's see if I have.
I'll go look it up, but this is interesting.
Yeah. Where's that one? I'm trying to find where. Is it dashboard? Yeah, never mind. I don't have it ready. But there is a sample project out there. It's like cognitive services. Anyway, I have it installed on my computer. I just don't know where it is at the moment. I think I don't know if I removed it, but I wanted to visualize anomaly detector for you guys, and that's the reason why I'm looking for it. Yeah, it'll come back. So in order to turn it off, it's too bright. Yeah, that turned it off. Cool. Any questions so far? This is anomaly detector. I think it's cool because it allows us to create and to identify patterns. Like in this case, I know that number is invalid, but it actually looks for patterns as it goes. So if you have, it identifies the patterns if it's out of range or not, especially if you're working on a machine that that rotates or has a certain lifespan, and it goes up and down, right? A certain temperature and certain time of day. There's a specific traffic. So you can use this anomaly detector not just for the last item. You can also do a batch. So let's say you have a list of numbers that you want to identify what are the anomalies on those numbers. You can use this cognitive services and incorporate it with Power BI. You can not just Power BI. You like in this case, since it's just an API call, you can do it in via notebook, C#. There's also JavaScript libraries out there that you can call anomaly detector to make it easy. Cool. All right. Going back to the presentation. So if you're interested in learning more about this, feel free. I have the GitHub link. I think it's also in the chat. And if you're interested in knowing more about information about me, I'm a lead software engineer at Spacey. If you're interested in the best way to contact me is through LinkedIn, Twitter, and I really appreciate feedback to help my presentation skills. That is my presentation for today, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Rob.
I get a ding.
That was very good, man.
That's great. Cool. So I'm interested now. I'm like, I want to show you what anomaly detector is. I want to find that. If there are any other questions, I'm going to start digging on my computer where I have that one.
and this was asked in the chat, but I wouldn't say it here. This is being streamed to YouTube right now and will be available on our group's YouTube channel after this. So if there's anything you want to go back and take a look at, you can do that.
Perfect.
Cool. Take control. But yeah, can you? Yeah, I think the main advantage, like I said, how we will be able to use this is if you have PowerShell commands that you run to manage your infrastructure as a service. Maybe you can use this Jupyter notebooks inside Azure Data Studio. If you have like SQL commands that you frequently run, how to maintain it, I would recommend creating Python notebooks inside, Azure Data Studio. I think it's a great way to, let's say, what was that? I bet you all experienced this before, where your coworker gives you a script file or .sql file, and it's like you have to kind of analyze what before you even run it. Kind of analyze what is it trying to do. It really helps to have examples of what that command after it runs, right? What that command looks like. So PowerShell commands, C#, if you can do combination like what I showed you guys here. If you have something like a small script that you can run, and it's something that's like more a maintenance tool or utility type, might be well worth having it in the notebook rather than even Docker commands would be a good way, because since you have a way you can call, right, PowerShell commands through here. So if you have documentation to some of your Docker commands, would be a good way to help out, improve communication between teams. All right. Should I have that? Cool. If there are any other questions, I'll be here around if you want to discuss them, or if you have any topic you want to talk. When is the next meetup, Eric?
It is next month. Should be the first Wednesday. David Pinton has the details. Trying to get those real quick.
It looks like it's going to be the 7th of October. And in terms of details for that, we have one of the guys that is on. He works .NET through AWS, and he's one of the guys that kind of works on the .NET implementations of like Lambda expressions and things of that nature, Lambda expressions and whatnot there at AWS. So he's one of the guys that works on the NuGet packages for integration with all that. So should be a pretty good deal. His name is Norm Johansson, and so he should be able to be on next month.
Cool.
Anybody has any general questions for Ron or for the user group? Feel free to ask them. There's always a Slack channel. You can talk to us through there as well. So thanks everyone for coming.
Is the pizza in the lobby?
What's that?
Is the pizza in the lobby?
Oh, I have a box of Domino's in the fridge, but I think it was from 2 nights ago, maybe 3 nights ago. I don't know if that's any good.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and stop the recording there. So, like this will be on YouTube if anyone wants it. We'll get any links we gave out in the description for the video. That'll be in the description for the YouTube video. So that'll be there if anyone wants it. But we're gonna go ahead and stop the recording here, and y'all can hang out. And if y'all still have questions, feel free to ask away.